Julie Goonewardene. She is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Innovation and Strategic Investment, Managing Director for Horizon Fund at the University of Texas System. Please join me to welcome the speaker. 25 minutes and then 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. And please accept the warm greetings of everyone from the state of Texas. We appreciate meeting with you today. What I would like to do in our conversation together is talk to you a little bit about what we've done at the University of Texas and at other universities to help build a continuum that enhances the ability to start companies based on university research. As we begin this conversation together, I wanted to orient you a little bit to the University of Texas system. We are the second largest university system in the United States. We educate over 200,000 students. Every year we confer over 50,000 degrees. We have 100,000 employees, 20,000 of which are faculty, and our operating budget, if we were a company, would place us about in the middle of the Fortune 500 in the United States. We have 14 campuses in our system. 6 are committed to healthcare. 8 are academic institutions. Texas is a very large state, and you can see from this map, we cover a large portion of it. And the communities that we serve are very different, and our institutions are very different, which leads us to create customized approaches to support these campuses. So you may have heard of MD Anderson, which is the #1 cancer hospital in the world. That is a University of Texas facility. UT Southwestern, which is another medical establishment, has 7 Nobel laureates. Our flagship campus is in Austin, and my colleague Mark Sanders will be speaking to you today. We also serve some of the more remote areas of Texas down to the south, the Rio Grande Valley, and we're also on the far west tip of the state in El Paso. That creates a very different sort of profile. In El Paso, 30% of our students cross the border every day to be educated, and we have a very large percentage at some of these other institutions of first-generation college students. We've been able to leverage our size and scale, we believe, to commercialize quite successfully. In the last couple of years, we've improved our performance quite dramatically. And so today, we execute a license agreement every 2 days. We have a patent issue in the United States for one of our inventions every 2 days, and we start a company every 13 days. In terms of our performance, we are ranked second in the United States for the number of companies that we create. We're 4th in the world for the generation of patents. And we're particularly proud of being ranked by Reuters as the most innovative university system in the world among the public universities, and 4th overall, coming behind MIT, Stanford, and Harvard. That last ranking is one that has moved quite dramatically in the last 2 years based, I believe, on some of the things that we've implemented. It's my particular privilege at the University of Texas System to lead the Office of Innovation and Strategic Investment. So we have a system office that functions, I suppose the best way to think about it would be as a corporate headquarters over the 14 institutions. And in the field, we have 100 staff people who work in commercialization, and then about that number that also work in entrepreneurship. In my office, we focus on 3 main things. We do a lot of work with industry partnerships. We also try to create innovative programming that helps us to be more successful commercializing, and I'll talk about a couple of those programs that we have running. And then I'm also responsible for a captive venture fund. It's a $50 million fund that invests in UT-based startups. So we will invest where a UT institution has equity in the company, or the company is based on UT intellectual property. We're different than a lot of university-based venture funds in that we will invest across multiple rounds. We're a dual-purpose fund, so we're trying to create a positive return for the university, and we're also trying to advance the commercialization mission. On the low end, we're in for about $100,000 a round. On the high end, several $1,000,000 a round. And unlike many university-based funds, we will go multiple rounds. We will also cross over into the public markets in support of our companies that are going public. This is a snapshot of some of our portfolio companies. We're very proud that Aglia went public this year. Lynx Labs has been acquired, Fibrio has been acquired, so we're very pleased by those successes. What's unusual about this fund is we will invest in any startup. So many investment funds in the United States are focused on a particular sector. We're generalists. So in this portfolio, you have life science, telecom, IT, across industries. And we do, at any given time, we're looking at 8 to 10 companies and making a decision about whether we will invest. We don't lead and we don't price, so we always have a co-investor with us, but we do select the deals that we go into. So turning our attention to how we've been able to, as a team, achieve some of our successes, I think an interesting and helpful organizing principle is to think about this as a continuum. And so obviously a continuum is a thoughtful sequence or thoughtful progression of steps that leads to a good outcome. And so we're always thinking about our continuum, what's happening in the continuum, and how do we improve the continuum. And we think about this both at a national level and a local level. It's my particular privilege to be among a team of people that advise the Secretary of Commerce in Washington on issues of innovation and entrepreneurship. And so it's important to also think about these continuums at different levels. So what has to happen at the policy level, what has to happen at the community level, what has to happen at the university level, working together to create these successful outcomes. So one of the things that we did on a national level is we have a vehicle in the United States called SBIR or STTR. And that was part of our federal funding mechanism. So our faculty would apply for a grant to the National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, Department of Energy for a grant. And then it became clear as a country that we would be helped if more of that research was translated to the marketplace. But there wasn't really a mechanism to begin that translation process. So the SBIR STTR program was put in place, and it's been very successful. It's very helpful. But one of the issues with the SBIR STTR grant process is that none of the funds that you received could be used for patent prosecution, as an example. So this group was able to advise the Secretary of Commerce and work with the authors of the legislation, because it's to be reauthorized in the new year. And it should pass that it will now be that patent expenses can be paid out of these SBIR, STTR funds. And so when I talk about a continuum and constantly looking at it, that's the type of example that I mean. So you have a national policy that's improving your opportunity to commercialize. You're constantly looking at that and figuring out how to improve it and change it. And then that feeds into what's happening at the community and at the university level. So I'd like to take a few minutes now and talk specifically about practical applications of this concept of a continuum. And it's been my particular privilege to do this work at 3 universities. My personal background is initially I was an entrepreneur. I was very fortunate to be one of the founders of a company that we took public, and then co-founded a software company, venture-backed, that we sold. And then after that, turned my attentions to helping move university innovations to the marketplace. And I've had the opportunity to do that at Purdue University, at the University of Kansas, and now at the University of Texas system. And each one of those environments is different, and each one of them has a different continuum. And so I want to talk about things that we did. So thinking about Purdue, I had the privilege of working with Dr. Peckney at Purdue, and I'm sure he's going to tell you about the wonderful things that are happening at Purdue today. But when I first went to Purdue, I was charged with helping professors who wanted to start companies. And West Lafayette, where Purdue is located, is in the middle of the United States. It's not an area where there's a lot of venture capital. It is fairly close to 2 major cities, Chicago and Indianapolis. But what became very clear as we thought about moving innovations out of the marketplace is that our faculty weren't particularly familiar with talking to venture capitalists at that time, and there wasn't a lot of investment capital available. So we needed to come up with a construct that allowed us to, in sort of a safe way, help our faculty to begin to understand what it was going to be like working with an investor, because it's a very different conversation than one might have when one's speaking about one's research. And we also wanted to create an opportunity for to move these innovations through some investment monies that weren't available. Because we were investing so early, we didn't, with that particular fund, did not want to have the pressure of having to create a return for the university. So this fund, when I was there, was based on philanthropic dollars that we raised. And what we found is that people will give money to a fund like this for really 3 reasons. One, they've made money entrepreneurially and they want to support entrepreneurial efforts. 2, they like the fact that their philanthropic dollars are being used in a very disciplined way. So they like seeing the process and what's happening, and so they know it's a little different than just writing a check and whatever happens, happens. And that attracted a certain kind of donor. And then frankly, there's a third class of donor who they knew if they made this gift, they could then also get closer to the university and see what was happening in opportunities as they matured, and so they would have an opportunity to invest in them later on if that was what they so chose to do. That made a big difference at Purdue. The other thing that we did at Purdue is that we developed something we call the fast-track methodology. It was a 12-week program where we could work with faculty who had invented something and wanted to have a company start around it. And in the first section, we would look at their intellectual property and what was happening in that area to see if there was sort of a clear opportunity that they weren't precluded from doing something because of other IP that had been invented by others. If they passed that gate, then we would look at the markets for them, and we would show them how big the market was generally, and then how big the addressable market, the market their invention would address, was. If that gate looked good, then we would build them a financial model that showed them what a company would look like. This was usually when we had the most conversation with people, because they would invariably think we had gotten it wrong, that the company would be more profitable or something than we projected. And so it was a really great way to talk with faculty or entrepreneurs to say, here are the assumptions that we based this model on, you tell us where we got the assumption wrong, and we'll rerun the model. If we pass that gate, then we would help them build an investor presentation. We ran that program with MBA students, coupling a second-year MBA student with a first-year MBA student, and it worked really well. So between having that methodology and then having this philanthropic venture fund, we were able to increase the number of startups coming out of Purdue. Kansas was a different environment. Kansas is also sort of in the middle of the country, but it's even more remote in some ways than West Lafayette. The only major city that's close is Kansas City. KU is different in that it has an academic campus and a medical campus, but they are about an hour apart. The University of Kansas had not enjoyed particular success in trying to be entrepreneurial or do commercialization. And we did a number of things there in terms of streamlining the process. And one of the themes of all of this work, both at Purdue and KU and at UT, and I think it's really important for universities to think about when they're trying to create robust ecosystems, is putting a scalable IT platform under whatever you do. So when we did the Emerging Innovation Fund, we built a system in the back end to run it. At KU, we used a number of technologies, which I'll talk about, to streamline the process. We also put in place a proof of concept fund, which also was designed to help faculty as you moved out of the lab into the marketplace when federal funding stopped covering them, but it was too soon for an investment. And we used that money to incent collaborations because we have seen that that's where some of the most interesting startups come from. So you were more likely to get a proof of concept grant from us if you were collaborating with a different department. You were even more likely to get a proof of concept grant if you were collaborating between the main campus and the medical school. And I think the results here speak for themselves. So you can see that in 2011, our licensing revenue was about $700,000. When I left in a couple years later, the revenues had essentially gone to $12 million. So the ability to have a real material impact, I think, is very important, and the sophisticated use of information technology is critical to having these kinds of results. So today I'm at the University of Texas System. I've been here about 2.5 years. The mission of the office that I'm responsible for is getting the innovations, the inventions that are created at the University of Texas System to the people that need them. Now, we can, to us, whether we license that or start a company, whether we try to make money or not, those are tactics. But the overall mission, the thing that guides us, what we're trying to do every day is just get those inventions to the people that need them. We think about ourselves as being a pump as opposed to being a filter. We're trying to push as much out as quickly as we can so the market can respond to it. Because we're working with such early inventions, what we say for shorthand is we make innovation real. We take that early concept and make it into something that can save or improve somebody's life. So when I think about these continuums, this is a picture of Benjamin Franklin and his experiment on lightning and what the critical factors were for him to discern. When I think about critical factors to being successful when you're building university continuums, I think it all really falls down to thinking about this in terms of money, people, and ideas. And so what you have in the university environment is you have a lot of money, but it's grant driven, so it's not particularly milestone driven. All investment dollars are very milestone driven. So you have to think about your funding streams differently, and so putting in place proof of concept money, early investment money, and then having a way to work with investors so that you can reap the rewards of those early investments is absolutely critical. In terms of people, I think there's really two issues. One is helping everyone who's been very successful in the academic environment to understand that it's a little bit of a different system when you're working in a company and what the behaviors that are required to be successful there. It's also really important from the university perspective to be able to get our graduates to those early stage companies. And we've got a program going that I'll talk about in just a minute to help do that matching. Because what we see in the United States is that most of the company job growth is in the smaller companies, but most of our universities are geared to helping graduates find employment at big companies. And so if we want to have a successful ecosystem, we need to change that dynamic. And then the third thing is, in terms of ideas, I just assume when I see science from faculty members that it's world-class science. But when you're trying to commercialize and you're trying to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem, it's not an evaluation of the science. It's an evaluation of whether a willing customer will pay you enough money to make a successful business so that you can bootstrap it, or whether an investor believes they can put money in and get a significant enough return. So it's not a judgment about the science. There are many things that have not been scientifically particularly meaningful that have created very robust returns as companies. And so I think you've got to think about your intellectual property and the idea in the context of markets as opposed to the quality of the science. And those of us involved in commercialization, I think, need to just assume that the science is world class. So this is the key thing I think about when I think about commercialization, when I think about creating an ecosystem, particularly an ecosystem that scales. And when I think about the successes that we've enjoyed at different institutions, there's really been a common theme. And the thing I think that we have done differently, which is using information technology in a way that creates repeatable, scalable kinds of results. Now, the companies, in fairness, the companies that I did entrepreneurially were software companies, so I would be inclined to think that way. But as an example, one of the reasons we were able to also move those numbers at KU the way we did is we implemented a software program that's called Salesforce. It's a customer relationship management program, and many universities in the United States run it. But what we did differently at the University of Kansas is we took data from 8 different places across the campus. So we took information from research, from tech transfer, from career services, from development, and so we were able to create what we called a 360-degree view of how a company was interacting with us. So when the company came, we could have a conversation that said, we see that you're hiring our graduates out of chemistry, but you're not hiring our graduates out of business. Can we talk about that? We see you're sponsoring research in chemistry, but not biology. Why is that? And so that increased our number of transactions by 70% and took our corporate sponsored research up by 40%. Because what the companies told us is that we were the only university who could speak to them in that way. And what it did is it was just obviously just a differentiator. And it got to the point, actually, it was interesting that some of the like Exxon, some of these large companies, they would call us because their companies are so big, they didn't know who was interacting with the university. And we actually knew more than they did. So it was very, very helpful. What we're doing at the University of Texas, I know that you're creating a mentor network, and what I learned yesterday is that I think you've done an outstanding job of it. Our goal at the University of Texas system, and we're just starting this work, is to create the largest university-based mentor network, certainly in the state of the Texas and aspirationally in the world. And we've looked at the best mentoring networks, particularly focused on the one at MIT. We've customized that for the University of Texas system. But again, we are putting an IT infrastructure underneath it so we can immediately see what's working and what's not working, so we can change how we run the program. And assuming that our initial pilot work is successful, we then have a network that we can scale. The last project I want to talk to you about is a program we're doing with Digerati. And this gets at this employment issue. So it's hard for small companies to find the talent, hard for the talent to find the small companies. And then it's also, if you have two graduates in mechanical engineering, and they have similar grade points, it's very difficult to tell one from the other. So what Digerati does is it allows the student to go in, or the candidate to go in, and very quickly go through a series of questions that says, these are the things that I like to do. And it allows them to say, these are the kinds of environments I want to work in. I want to work in a team, I want, whatever it is. The company doesn't have to write a job description. They go through and answer same kind of questions, talk about their environment. And then the system runs a proprietary algorithm, and it matches. And then the company gets back usually about 5 matches. So you have a much higher success rate in terms of making the market work and creating an ecosystem. So I guess my concluding comment would be making sure you have the correct funding streams in place by stage, making sure that you address these issues in terms of the differences in the two cultures, academic and business, and also making sure the talent and the companies can find each other, and then making sure that the ideas are market informed has really been what we've done at the University of Texas system that has, I believe, engendered some of the success that we've enjoyed. So thank you for your attention, and I think there may be a minute or two for questions if anyone has one.
Very much for the excellent talk. My name is Mohammed Badri. I am with the Schlumberger research here next door to this building. My question is that, do you have statistics of the success rate of the startup companies and and the failing ones, for example, after you push them out? Were there some sort of remedial work plan, if you like, is that how put them back on track and become successful? Can you comment on that?
So I can talk about the Horizon Fund. We have not had a company that we have invested in fail. We had one fail in clinical trials, excuse me. One failed in phase 3 clinical trials. But other than that, we've had no company failures. I will say that we also provide those companies a lot of support services, and we're very close to them. So the minute they start struggling, we intervene to help them with marketing services, IT services, financial services. In the United States, I know generally the statistics are that a company formed based on university research is about 5 times more likely to be successful than one that is not started based on university research.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Could you talk about the difficulties that you have faced and how did you handle them? What kind of difficulties did you face? And we'd like to learn from your experience. How did you solve them?
Sure. So when I first started doing this work, my father was a professor, and most of my cousins are professors, and so the fact that I understood how the university actually works was, I think, critical to my success. And so the challenge was a little bit about what I alluded to. It's this cultural shift in making things happen. So usually what happens in the United States, a business person comes to the university, they say, you need to change this, you need to change this, you need to change this, you need to do this. And the university says, thanks for that. It's been working pretty well for us. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. I found it's much more productive to say, okay, if you're a faculty member, you're fundamentally an independent contributor. And if you're going to work in a company, that's a group activity. If you're a faculty member, you're used to non-milestone driven funding streams. And in a company, it's all about milestone driven funding streams. As a faculty member, intellectual property, your ideas, they're the coin of the realm. They're the most important thing. You start a company, they're essential but not sufficient. So the challenge has been, how do you build the bridges between those two cultures to create success? And I would say generally that requires diplomacy, determination, a little luck, and a lot of persistence. Yeah.
Yes, Craig Smith from Dahran Techno Valley Company right here in this building. Thank you for your presentation. It obviously costs a tremendous amount of money to execute what you at University of Texas System is executing in ushering and shepherding these entrepreneurs and startups to real businesses, and having such a minimal failure rate is outstanding. Can you address a little bit how you fund that? How does the university fund it? And I don't mean VC for the startups,
No, I know.
but support and so forth.
So I said this the other day, at Texas we like oil. Though in Texas we operate from an extreme position of privilege in the following way. The public lands in West Texas, both the oil rights and the grazing rights, 2/3 of that income flows to the University of Texas System. So we have the second biggest endowment in the country after Harvard. So we have money to execute on these kinds of programs, and that is very different. We're able to do things at a scale and much faster than perhaps other institutions that aren't blessed with that particular dynamic. Yes?
Thanks for your presentation.
Sure.
Anas Al-Mudafer from Ilm Company based in Riyadh. My question is around your investment strategy. We saw a wide spectrum of companies in multiple disciplines and fields. So what's your investment strategy on selecting the companies? And are you about exits like any VCs, or it's about growing the company and keeping engaging with those companies until they go IPO?
Yeah. So our investment strategy is really on a deal-by-deal basis. The portfolio, 2/3 of the research budget at the University of Texas System is in life sciences. And that's sort of reflected in our investments. We're working very hard to mix that and find other kinds of deals that will frankly turn more quickly. How we diligence a deal like any other VC. We use a lot of external expertise because we have to, because it's very difficult to have a team that could understand an energy startup, an IT startup, a therapeutic startup. And we rely on the diligence of our co-investors and put those two together. So it's really a deal-by-deal strategy. And then we're, as we can, becoming more selective on our life sciences deals and actively looking for deals in other sectors to balance the portfolio. We make some investments, we see that there's an opportunity. We view it as a lottery ticket because it's so early. Those tend to be smaller investments. So they tend to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. If we're moving multiple millions of dollars into a round, it's usually a large round. So Aglia, I think we put a little over $2 million into a $40 million round. And then when the company went public, we put another 2+ in, and we had already put another 2. So is that helpful? You bet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Julie.